Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Hope you're staying warm out there. Pretty cold where I'm at here. Freezing, 27 below wind chill. So, thanks for joining me. We got a lot to talk about today, lots of interesting stuff going on. So, um, you know, there's a lot going on with this immigration stuff. That's main topic these days. And so there's a lot of protests, a lot of crazy shit going on with all that. So, um, you know, there's a lot to be said about it, but we're going to start. I think we're going to start today. We're going to talk about this Josh Hawley, and he he's grilling this OBGYN doctor in front of Congress and in front of the Senate, and he's he asked her this easiest question possible and says, "Can men get pregnant?" That's it. And this woman, this doctor, she's an actual medical doctor, cannot answer the question. And he asked her over and over and over again. She deflects and she changes her answer and she won't refuses. It's like this is the crazy time in which we're living. I can't believe that this is even still a topic of conversation and that people still are having these conversations. Is that crazy? I got the comments are open here. If you guys want to comment, if you got anything you want to say, go ahead. Feel free to put it in the comments there on YouTube, and I'll try my best to read them and keep up with them. Also, don't forget, like, subscribe, share the videos, comment on the videos. That helps the channel grow. Helps. It just makes it all more fun all around. So also we'll be talking about. In addition to Hawley, in addition to the issues going on in Minnesota, also we'll talk about, I've got a poll here about Trump's support for illegal immigration. Also, apparently in Australia, there is too much toxic masculinity. They found that 44% of young men have toxic masculinity. At what point does it just become masculinity? 44% of these young boys are all toxically masculine, but in Australia, after they've been, pussified their whole lives, they're still toxically masculine. Like they've been taught this forever. So there's definitely genetic and biological things that are going on here that people are just refusing. They don't act enough like little girls. Therefore, they're toxic. They roughhouse and they push each other. Oh, toxic. And it's a bullshit narrative that everybody's caught on to by now, but they're still putting this stuff out. They're still well, in Australia and Europe, they're a bit behind in realizing that this kind of stuff is just total BS. In America, we're kind of on the leading edge of this, and we've overturned and we've reversed course faster than all these other countries because they're mired in it so much deeper than we were. And we saw how ridiculous it was instantaneously compared to these countries. They still are doing stupid shit like, I don't know what. I saw an article the other day. It was from Australia, and it said that one of the leaders there said that, what did he say? Something stupid like radical Islam was not responsible for murder, guns are, or something. I don't know, something stupid like that. And it's like, this is shortly after those radical Muslims shot up all those people on the beach there in Bondi Beach. And, they just still refuse to just acknowledge reality because they're still hiding behind all these stupid little labels like toxic masculinity, Islamophobia, all that kind of shit that's been so annoying. And these people have grown in annoyance, grown and grown and grown. They become more and more annoying with each passing year. And with tides finally turning, and people are seeing how kind of crazy these people are. But I want to start off actually with a very interesting study that was just done, or it was a New York Times opinion piece. And let me bring it up here for you. It says a New York Times report finds that approval of homosexuality has been declining since 2020, especially among young people across the political spectrum. I thought this was really interesting because usually we think of young people as being more open to these kinds of things, more open to homosexuality, more open to alternative lifestyles. Gen Z is who we're talking about with the young people here. They are the most diverse generation that's ever existed. They're just massively diverse. And so what's interesting is to see these kinds of reports come out of the most diverse generation. You would think that the most diverse generation would have the least amount of qualms about other people's behaviors, that they would be the most open to other races, the most open to other sexualities, the most open to other ideas or opinions or whatever, because they're constantly running into people who are different like that. And so the whole globalist liberal idea is to get these people, all different kinds of people, running into each other, interacting with each other. And through that process, their biases, their stereotypes, their prejudices will all be diminished. And that's kind of what had been happening until 2020, with the homosexuality, at least. And it sort of is one data point that undermines the whole idea of diversity is always good and diversity always reduces prejudice and bias, because here you've got the most diverse generation and they are disapproving of homosexuality more than any other generation, and they're growing in their disapproval. So I read the article. It was pretty long and pretty, poorly written because it was hard to sort of follow their argument. So I had Grok summarize it for me. And it moved. Oh, here we go. So here we are. It says, after a long decline, so that this means like people are not anti-gay. So there's been a long decline. So more pro-gay, it has been growing. People are getting more and more okay with the idea of gays, basically, and homosexuality and all that. So, but it says the trend reversed. So we were getting more and more tolerant, and then in 2021, the trend reversed sharply from 2021 to 2024. That was the end of the study, was 2024. So maybe it still is going with the same rapidity, but with anti-gay bias increasing by around 10% in 4 years. Now that's for the total population. That's not just young people. That's the total population. It has increased 10%. So the whole population, it seems, is kind of feeling the same way, but it's increased more rapidly in the 25 and under. This reversal is described as particularly sharply compared to bias against other marginalized groups. So apparently the study only was measuring bias against marginalized groups. It would be really interesting, I think, to see like anti-white bias. Like, I wonder how has that changed, or is it changing, or things like that would be interesting to see too. But apparently this one is the bias that's increased the most. So the increase is notably faster and more pronounced among those under 25. Why would that be? Any guesses? Why would under 25 be so why would they become more prejudiced against gay people? I don't really understand. There hasn't really been, and I've heard people talk about this, and I think that this is really a thing. Now, the rise is not, you would think that this is just like conservative people, but the rise has occurred in both conservatives and liberals. So even liberals are getting more anti-gay. Why? What is driving this? And why during the Biden administration? What was going on that tipped the scales here? 2020 was the height of gay acceptance, I guess you could say. And then after that, it fell, all while Biden was in office. So why would that be? What's going on here? I don't really know. The authors explicitly reject common explanations like spillover from anti-trans sentiment. They found no meaningful correlation between rises in anti-trans and anti-gay bias or moral panics around grooming. Instead, they point to post-2020 social instability, COVID pandemic, economic pressures, political conflict, which historically correlates with higher intergroup hostility and scapegoating. Now, that doesn't really sound like a very convincing reason to me, because then all of the biases would have gone up at the same rate, because all of the, you know, all the groups would be seen as, there would be more intergroup hostility and scapegoating against all the groups from all the other groups. But we see this one specifically going up. Anti-establishment resentment towards institutions, government, corporations, seen as having failed people, especially resonant among younger generations facing uncertainty. By 2020, gay rights had become an establishment position, making gay people collateral damage and backlash against perceived institutional overreach. Now, that I could see that would make some sense, because it has sort of become an establishment position, and if your goal is to throw off all of the establishment, and that gets sort of tied to it and linked to it, then yeah, that would make sense that they would just throw that out too. But still, that's not really that satisfying of an answer. I think especially for the younger generations, it's I think a lot of it has to do with they're a lot more, they're pretty savvy, and they're pretty up to date on what's going on. They know that there's been these certain things that the establishment, that the overlords have wanted to push upon people, and they've used to propagandize people, and they've used to tell you you're a bad person, or they've used to push an agenda, or they've used to try to manipulate you in some way. And this gay stuff was sort of one of those things, the LGBTQ rights and the parades. And, I think I'm surprised that it seems like transgenders really did a lot of damage to the gay rights position, because the transgenders kind of got lumped in with the gays. And that I think an unfortunate, and I think a lot of the gay community also agrees. They don't really want to be lumped in with transgenders. They're kind of upset about that, and they make it known that they are not to the same group of people. They think that. So anyway, but I think maybe it's a bigger part of this rejection of identities and identity categories, and that these things are so important that, like, they're precious and they have to be protected at all costs, or that just the way in which identity politics has been used to crush people and disenfranchise other people. So the gay and queer and lesbian and transgender stuff has been used to disenfranchise straight people. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's where they're coming from on that too. But I think people really, really underestimate how conservative the younger generation, how Gen Z is. They don't quite understand it yet, especially if you're older. If you're over 35 or something, you probably don't really understand what's going on. I don't really understand. I try to talk to them as much as I can and try to wrap my head around what's going on, but they're super conservative. Like, they think everything is fucked, and that we need to go back, not even necessarily go back, but just burn down a lot of the things that are fucking us over. And, we don't need to be given tons of money to other countries when when our young people are suffering and they need opportunities and they need help. And so seeing them do that, or the fake outrage over, like, these, especially among young men, that the young men are like somehow privileged, even though they can't even get a job because some gay black lesbian, or whatever, some black lesbian got the job instead, just because of she she checks the boxes, right? This whole box checking bullshit, they are disgusted with. They think it's terrible. They think it's destructive. They think it's that it destroys their opportunities and it destroys other people's opportunities, and it needs to be destroyed. But that's sort of the whole mission of the Democratic Party, is to have as many check boxes as possible. Like everything becomes every group becomes a marginalized group except for straight white men. Everybody else gets to be marginalized except for them. And then they have to still carry the burden of everybody, or still run the, have the expectations of being successful, or still want the things that their grandparents had, like a family and a house and kids and a good paying job and all that kind of stuff. And they see this stuff as standing in their way. And I don't know, this just all the identity politics, I think, is really out of favor. And they don't really identify with that kind of a worldview anymore. It's sort of like hit its peak with the millennials, and the millennials were like the most progressive. And, I remember, I'm older millennial, but I remember when Barack Obama was running for president, the millennials were just like fucking losing their minds in celebration over it. They just couldn't run to Barack Obama fast enough. It was just like this amazing thing. It was a black president, and oh my gosh, we finally made it. And here we are with this is a historical moment and all that kind of stuff. So I think it sort of peaked there, and then it's falling with the next generation, Gen Z. They're like, wow, that was fucking crazy. Like we have rainbow flags like hanging in our classrooms and shit like that. Like we have our teachers are lesbians, and they're telling us boys how to behave and what to do and how to be. Fuck them. Why do they think they can tell us that? But they saw themselves, the lesbian teacher saw themselves as being somehow morally superior. And so they were able to dictate to all these young people how they should be. And the young people, they don't want it. They don't like it. It's basically everybody else gets to have an identity except them. Everybody else gets to climb up the ladder except them, because they get tied into some evil past that they had nothing to do with. They just want to work hard and have a family. And these identity politics types are stopping them from that, and they're mad about it. I think people are really, really going to be surprised at the kinds of things that Gen Z will do. Like, I think that I would like to see a poll that says, do you think gay marriage should be abolished? I think when they get in power, or they get enough power, I think it's going to be done. They're going to overturn it. The gay marriage is going away. Right. And so this is why a lot of people like to associate these people with, like, oh, they're Nazis, they're fascists, they're bigots, they're terrible people, and it's like, well, they're just very, I don't know what else to call them other than conservative. I don't think they're necessarily conservative, but they do tend to be more religious. Gen Z is like a generation that's more religious than their parents, and that's like never happened ever. Young people are always less religious. Young people are always more left. And like we had this kind of pattern that was always happening in the United States, where and probably in most countries, where the next generation was always more liberal and they were always less religious than the previous generation. And it went on for 100 years like that. And this is a reversal of that. And, it could be because conservative people have more kids, so Gen Z might be that tipping point to where there's more conservative kids born to conservatives in those years than there were to liberals, because liberals are having fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer kids, and have been for quite some time, than conservatives. And so I think maybe Gen Z is the result of that, because it's 80% of kids basically identify with the same political party or same political beliefs as their parents, essentially. And so I think maybe there's something to that too. But these kids are conservative. They are religious. They're not politically correct. they're way past political correctness, way past it. Whereas old people like me and you guys probably, we still have all this programming of political correctness where it's like, wow, you're not supposed to say that. You're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to be nice here. You're supposed to not. Like, we still have all that built into us. These kids do not. They're like deliberately trample on political correctness because they think it's so ridiculous. And they think it's such an affront to free speech and like free dialogue and freedom. And so they have no qualms about saying some of the craziest stuff from the perspective of an older person. It's like that Nick Fuentes interview when he was on Piers Morgan. You could just tell, you could see how Piers was the old guard, oh, don't say that, or you're a racist, or you're a homophobe, or you're a misogynist, or whatever. You can't say those things. You got to be now. You got to be parsing your words, and you got to, make sure that you're staying within the structure of the word police. And these younger generations, they don't believe in any of that stuff. They're like, fuck that. We don't care. Come at us. So big things are going to change. A lot of things are going to change when these kids come into power. Now, that's going to take, 20 years before they have any kind of like institutional power. But it's why they get attacked a lot already by Democrats who are trying to maintain this social order. And, the Democrats are trying to maintain the pro-gay, pro-diversity, pro-immigrants, all that kind of stuff. Basically, in the minds of these young guys, that's anti-white men rhetoric. They think that they feel like there's been a concerted, deliberate effort to undermine white men, straight men, to deliberately disenfranchise them. And they're right. There has been a deliberate effort to do that. And they don't like it and they're mad about it. Who can blame them? Nobody likes that kind of stuff. Nobody would like it and no other group likes it either. And that's why we do things the way we do things. So I just thought that was interesting how younger generations are getting more anti-gay, and I've heard a lot of them talk about like gay marriage and stuff like that, and they're not cool with it at all. So, there's definitely a big change that's coming up with the younger generations. So everybody just needs to be aware of that. Be mindful. So, and a lot of this, people, you cannot ignore Nick Fuentes. Like, as much as people don't like him or whatever, like, he is the voice of a lot of this young generation. He's the number one political streamer. Number one. The other day, he had 1.3 million people watching his live stream. 1.3 million. That is insane amount of people. So he has a massive following. So you can't just discount him as like, oh, he's Hitlerian, he's a racist, whatever. Like, you're talking tens of millions of people who take what he says seriously. And I have watched some of his stuff, and he actually is, aside from all of his comments that are controversial, he does have a lot of knowledge about politics. Like, you can tell he's been paying attention for 10 years, and he knows all the characters and the people and the organizations and how this connects to that across the world and why they're like. I was impressed. I never watched anything, but I wanted to, because I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the young people. And so I watched some of his videos, and he's a lot more intelligent and a lot more aware and has a lot better analysis than what I was expecting. So I, for whatever that's worth. Anyway, let's get on to the Josh Hawley thing. I think this is pretty funny. I don't see how anybody could watch this video and not think it's hilarious and ridiculous And it's like it's some kind of skit. You know, you almost think that it's a satire because this can't possibly be reality, but this is the reality we're still living in. You know, this is the kind of shit that Gen Z sees, and they're like, "Are you fucking kidding me? We're so done with that shit." So this is this woman, OBGYN doctor, testifying in front of Senate committee, and she just simply refuses to answer the question. She's an OBGYN, granted. OBGYN. She refuses to answer the question if men can get pregnant or if men can have babies. One of those. Men can have babies or men can get pregnant. I forget which one how he asks it, but she refuses to answer. She just, It's so ridiculous. So let's take a watch because it's pretty fun.
Do you think that men can get pregnant?
I hesitated there because I wasn't sure where the conversation was going or what the goal was. I mean, I do.
In order to answer that question, you have to know where the conversation's going, and what your point was for asking like that. Why would you? I'm going to need more context as to what you mean. Like, why would you need any of that kind of stuff? Like, that's such a ridiculous thing to say.
Patients with different identities. I take care of many women. I take care of people with different identities. And so that's where I paused. I think, yeah, I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
Well, the goal is just the truth. So
where are you going with that? To the truth. The truth is that's the goal. Pretty simple. Can men get pregnant? Well, do you mean why? I don't know what you mean, or like why you're asking that.
Can men get pregnant?
Again, the reason I paused there is I'm not really sure what the goal of the question is.
The goal is just to establish a biological reality. You just said a moment ago that science and evidence should control, not politics. Absolutely. So let's just test that proposition. Can men get pregnant?
I take care of people with many identities, but
can men get pregnant?
Many women that can get pregnant. I do take care of people that don't identify as women.
Can men get?
So dumb. Oh, it's so painful. Like, I take care of people with many identities. Is it any wonder why Gen Z is the way they are? They grew up with this kind of shit constantly all over the place. Anyone who's shocked at the way that they think just needs to watch this. And this tells you everything you need to know about why Gen Z believes what they believe. This shit is so stupid, so ridiculous, and they want absolutely nothing to do with it. And they want somebody who comes in and just gets rid of all this shit. Get rid of all this. Let's get on to things that are important. We still have doctors, medical doctors, who can't answer the question if men can get pregnant. How are we supposed to solve problems that actually matter? And this just goes to show, like, if you can't answer the question if men can get pregnant, I won't listen to anything you say. You're a totally dishonest bad actor. You couldn't care less about truth or facts or having an open and honest conversation. No one should ever listen to anything you ever say again. You should be banished from society. You should have all of your licenses stripped from you. This is so ridiculous.
Pregnant.
Again, as I'm saying,
let me just remind you, you testified to a moment ago. Science and evidence should control, not politics. So, can men get pregnant? You're a doctor, I think.
Science and evidence should guide medicine.
Do science and evidence tell us that men can get pregnant? Biological men, can they get pregnant?
I also think yes/no questions like this are a political tool. And
no, yes/no questions are about the truth, doctor.
She's trying so hard to get out of this. I think this, like, binary, and binaries are bad. So like this makes these crazy, ridiculous, progressive, liberal Democrats look so bad. It's so funny. It's like, this is how they really think. How could you stand having a conversation with people like this?
Or let's not make a mockery of this proceeding. This is about science and evidence. And I'm asking you, the United States Supreme Court just heard arguments yesterday at great length on this question. This is not a hypothetical question. This is not theoretical. It affects real people in their real lives. And you're here as an expert, called by the other side as an expert. And you've been telling us that you follow, right, you're a doctor, and you follow the science and the evidence. So I just want to know, based on the science, can men get pregnant? That's a yes or no question. It really is, I think.
I think you're trying to reduce the complexity of a lot.
I'm not. I'm trying to get, it's not complex. I'm trying to get to an answer, and I'm trying to test, frankly, your veracity as a medical professional and as a scientist. Can men get pregnant?
I think you're also conflating
Yes,
male
extraordinary.
female.
I think you're also conflating.
With
No, I'm not conflating male and female. They're two different things. There's biological men and there's biological women. And I want to know, can men get pregnant?
what you were talking about is biological.
You're not going to answer my question, it sounds like.
Biological males.
This isn't hard, doctor. Can men get pregnant? Yes or no?
I would be more than happy to have a conversation with you.
Look, you need to have a conversation. We need to have like a really long conversation about like how we can understand the nuances of the circumstances of the situations, because this is not a simple thing. And I take care of people of a lot of different identities. Like the fact that she thinks you could have need to have a long, drawn out conversation about such an easy. It's like, do objects fall towards the earth? I don't know. Maybe sometimes. No, I don't know.
That is not coming from a place of trying to be polarized and push.
I'm not trying to be polarizing. I'm trying to ask, I think it is extraordinary that we are here in a hearing about science and about women. And for the record, it's women who get pregnant, not men. We are.
Well, he's not even a medical doctor. And he even knows. Wow. Well, I'm going to need to see your credentials, Senator Hawley. Like, how can you can't just be saying shit like that and acting like you know these things. Do you have a research paper? Do you have stats? Have you done peer-reviewed research on that to be able to claim that? No? Well, then I can't trust it. How could you ever possibly know that women are the ones who get pregnant, not men? You have a degree? You got a medical degree?
Hear about the safety of women and science that shows that this abortion drug causes adverse health events in 11% of cases. That's 22 times greater than the FDA label, another fact you haven't acknowledged. And yet you won't even acknowledge the basic reality that biological men don't get pregnant. There's a difference between biological men and biological women. I don't know how we can take you seriously and your claims to be a person of science if you won't level with this on this basic issue. I thought we were past all of this, frankly. I can't believe we're still here talking about this.
I agree.
I am a person of science, and I'm also someone here.
How are we still having this conversation in 2026? How? Man, people in 50 years, people are going to look back on this stuff and just be like, these were the stupidest people that we have ever had on the planet. I think the stupidest people that have ever existed on the planet. This is what people are going to look back and think, like, how did they even feed themselves? How did they run institutions? How did they build anything? How could they, if they can't even answer the question, like, if men can get pregnant, like a kindergartner knows the answer to that. How were they so stupid?
Use here to represent the complex experiences of my patients. And I don't think polarized language or questions serve that goal. I don't think they serve the American people.
It is not polarizing
They
to say that there
are
is a scientific difference between men and women. And I want this to be clear and for the record.
And the fact that it's a polarizing to ask that question is so stupid too. It's just stupid all around.
It is not polarizing to say that women are a biological reality and should be treated and protected as such. That is not polarizing. That is truth. It is also, by the way, the United States Constitution, which offers unique protections to women in a variety of circumstances as women. And your refusal to recognize women as women and men as men is deeply corrosive to science, to public trust, and yes, to constitutional protections for women as women.
Well, see, this is a good point, because this is like the Supreme Court case where Alito was asking I forget exactly who it was, but he was asking them to define what they meant by woman, because they were talking about transgender women in women's sports, and so they need to have a definition for what woman entails to know if this falls into the category. And so Alito was asking him about what's a woman, how do you define a woman, and the guy couldn't answer, and he wouldn't answer, and he couldn't. And so it was like, well, if we don't even have a definition of what a woman is, how are we supposed to rule on whether transgender women can play in women's sports if we don't even know what women are? Right? This is not like, splitting the atom here, people. But because these people are so delusional and locked into their weird fucking political ideologies, they can't even, they have ceased to become normal people. The woke mind virus, right? This is what it does. It destroys people's reason and common sense.
And I think it's extraordinary that you would sit here and advance a political agenda that has been thoroughly discredited and rejected by the American people in this forum. And I'm glad we had this exchange, because it is exceptionally clarifying. It is also in many ways quite depressing.
Quite depressing. It's quite depressing that I have to live among such fucking idiots. And you know that this is all she's just lying, right? You know that she knows the answer. I mean, everybody knows she knows the answer, but it's because of this weird political environment and that she's all in bed with these weirdo far left liberal idiots that think that, well, we don't know. Is it a boy? Is it a girl? Men can have babies. Men can have babies, and women are women. Women are women. That. And I mean, whoever pulled off this idea of we don't know what a woman is, and they were able to propagandize this level of this many people, it's truly remarkable. Like, whoever did it, I gotta say kudos. Kudos to you. You pulled off something that I would have never thought anybody could pull off. To convince people that dudes dressed in dresses are real women, and to convince people to say that men can have babies and to believe it, is like, that would be the hardest piece of propaganda, because it's so obviously retarded that would be the hardest piece of propaganda to pull off, wouldn't it? Because it's just like, nature is so against everything that you're talking about, and it's so blatantly obvious to everybody, that, like, very impressed. Very impressed. So whoever you are, stand up, give yourself a hand for pulling off one of the biggest, most difficult pieces of propaganda that could possibly exist. But I suppose, mostly it's women, so I don't know how much credit you know what I mean? Pretty easy to propagandize. So anyway, let's see what Joe Scarborough has to say about this, because Scarborough, not necessarily a shining beacon of logic, reason, and conservative values. Even he gets it. Even this dummy right here, even he gets it. This moron, he even understands So if even he understands and he's retarded, then how much more retarded are these people who don't understand? I mean, wow. I mean, that's just crazy. Anyway, let's see what he has to say.
Get rid of those issues right up front. So get rid of those issues right up front so you can then talk about the things that matter to all Americans. Like, for instance, 85% of Americans, I've been saying this for 10 years now, 85% of Americans don't think that men who transition after puberty should be able to compete against women. That's easy. Don't get wrapped up on that. That's easy.
I just can't get over the fact that this needs to be a conversation, because us normal people out here in the real world, we're like, yeah, how have we spent tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of hours debating such a ridiculous, stupid topic? But they're still in states. They're still suing Trump. They're dedicated to this whole thing. But even Joe Scarborough sees it's easy. Yeah, biological men who've gone through puberty can't play against women in sports. Done. Boom. This doesn't need to be you only make yourselves look like complete fools, idiots who have no thinking abilities, no thinking skills, no critical, no that you. And then we're going to take advice from somebody who thinks trans women are real women and should be playing against women in sports. We're going to take their economic advice. Are you going to take their geopolitical advice? Are you going to think that their stance on illegal immigrants is valid? No, because these people have already shown themselves to be complete fucking idiots.
Right? Don't be afraid to say that. Because if you're afraid to say that, you're going to keep losing elections. It's that simple. And I swear, I don't know how Josh Hawley finds the people he finds to question. And Claire, if you disagree with me, let me know. But when Josh Hawley asks you, or when somebody asks a Democrat, can men have babies? And you refuse to answer that for 30 minutes. That might be a clue why they think some progressives are disconnected with America. Let me give you the answer to that. It's the key. It's upside down, bottom of the crossword puzzle. The correct answer is no. Men can't have babies. And men who transition.
Look at that. He looks like the smart one on the panel. That's how devolved and how stupid the conversation has gotten.
After puberty, should not be able to compete against girls in sports. This is easy. Get that out of the way. If that's not easy for you, don't run because you're going to lose.
I can't believe they even have to have a special meeting about political strategy and to be told because they don't know that maybe don't say that men can get pregnant and maybe just answer the question with women are the ones who can get pregnant. Like that would be a winning political strategy. I mean, that you even have to have this conversation is so funny. Oh man. And it's just like this issue just won't go away. I think most people have moved on because it's just so blatantly obvious that this stuff is stupid and that people are out of their minds and that it's just I don't know, that it's such an easy decision. Who wants to keep talking about it over and over and over again? It's like, no, they can't play in women's sports and no, men can't get pregnant. Don't be a moron. But because Democrats insist on being morons, they keep dragging us into having these conversations over and over and over again. Well, okay, let's see. What do we got? So this kind of ties in with the stuff I was talking about earlier with the Gen Z and sort of how people don't really understand them. People are especially older people, I would say, not even that old, even 35, maybe even 30 and older, they don't understand these young, 25 younger, 25 down to, let's say, 12, that generation. We don't really understand them because we didn't grow up really with all the pressures and all the weird shit that these kids saw. Plus, they're chronically online, so they've like run into the craziest shit by the time that they're 16 years old. Things that you probably still haven't run into. People saying the wildest stuff. But this is from from Australia. Nearly half of Australian teenage boys hold toxic masculinity beliefs. First of all, who is the one who decides if they're toxically masculine? I will tell you, it is women. Some female educators, female social scientists, those kinds of people, hardcore leftist liberals who think that, somehow it's desirable for men to be sort of like pathetic and weak and sort of like Tim Walz in their mind. Tim Walz is kind of like an ideal masculine. He doesn't have any toxic masculinity at all because you can just like totally dismiss the guy. You can tell that he's a complete idiot. He doesn't have any like strength about him. He's kind of weak and pathetic, and I think that's why he got himself embroiled in all this fraud and stuff, because he's just kind of a weak, pathetic person who believes in all this liberal gobbledygook, and he doesn't, within himself, he doesn't have like any gravitas or personality or strength or any of that kind of stuff. So this happens a lot in politics, especially in the Democrat side and the far left, is that the guys are such weak, pathetic, unmasculine men that they end up doing these really weird, twisted things. And it's like they try to act like good little boys and who are sort of limp and kind of like half female, and then they act out, and it's just like shit. They go off the rails and they do this thing that's really weird. And so Tim Walz, I think, is a good example of that, where he believes this kind of propaganda that there's such a thing as toxic masculinity, that it's a very common experience that basically defines every single male. And, it's like wanting to fight is somehow toxic masculine. Well, why? According to who? Who gets to decide these things? So a new survey of 1,400 Australian teenagers reveals that 44% of teenage boys, almost half, right, still hold concerning attitudes about masculinity. Oh boy, we can't have that. These people show their actually, in a weird way, it's sort of like a compliment, because it shows how much power masculinity has and how scared they are of it, because they know that it's the most powerful force on the planet. And so they want to undermine that force as much as possible so that they can have power over it, because they know it's such a strong, powerful force. So this is what they're trying to do. This is why they're constantly trying to undermine men, constantly. And they're still mad that it's not working as much as they wanted it to, because we still have 44% of teenage boys who hold these ideas about masculinity that we don't want them to hold. So dang it, how are we supposed to propagandize them better? And it's really hard to propagandize men, because they're much more individualistic and they like to make up their own minds and find out their own information, right? So that's why they always are struggling, and it's so difficult to just like get them to do what you want them to do from a liberal perspective. But it's easy to get women to do what you want to do, because if that's what other women are doing, then that's what they're going to do, right? But so they're still adhering to what researchers, I would be interesting to see what the names of the researchers are, and that these researchers call adolescent man box rules. Okay, let's find out what this man box is all about. These man box rules include constant pressure to appear tough and confident. What's wrong with that? They don't. What's toxic about that? Oh, because then they're not crying and emotional and open and sensitive. They're not acting like women. They're tough and they're confident. Tough and confident. Oh, no, no, not tough and confident. That's terrible. That's so toxic. What's toxic about being tough and confident? Tell me. I mean, there's good and bad to everything. I mean, you could say, oh, well, they appear kind. Well, there are downsides to kindness. And there are times when you need to not be kind. So then all the things that happen as a result of being kind, negative effects, well, then kind is toxic. Right? It's so dumb. I can't believe this. Honestly, I can't believe this toxic masculinity thing is. I didn't even realize this was still a thing anymore. I thought that had already, that was like years ago. We sort of did away with it because there's nothing. They've kind of lost hope in getting rid of it. What they consider toxic masculinity, which is just maleness. Emotional restriction. So controlling your emotions is toxic. You should not control your emotions. You should not be tough. You should not be confident. You should not be heterosexual. So why though? Because we don't like those things. They make it hard for us to control you. They make it hard for us to predict exactly what to do to make you do what we want you to do. Because your emotions need to be out in the open so that we can use them to manipulate you. How do you not get this? We need you weak and insecure and emotional, okay? Because then we can tell you what to do and we can put the fix in and we can control you and manipulate you and get you to do whatever we want. And if you don't do that, you're toxic. See how it works? Right? See how it works? Emotional restriction, self-control, basically. Not letting yourself get out of hand with emotion, not letting emotion rule your life, not letting emotion dictate your beliefs, not letting emotional outbursts run wild. It's like, that's a virtue. That's a good thing. Oh no, it's emotional restriction because then you're all stuck inside and you just won't go to a female therapist and say, you know what, my dad never loved me. That's why I can't. That's the kind of bullshit these people think. It's so dumb. Oh gosh. Okay, so emotional restriction, which is a good thing. Being tough and confident are good things. And the pressure is because we're trying to get them to be those things. Social pressure is on everybody always to do things that we think are better for society. We think it's better for boys and men to be tough and confident, to restrict their emotions because they got to get on with life, and we depend on them to not be emotional. We depend on them to go to the crime scene and be able to solve the crime. We depend on them to be able to shoot a bad guy when he's trying to kill other people. You can't do those things if you can't restrict your emotions. You would just have a meltdown. And this is why women aren't in a lot of those things, because they don't have emotional restriction for the most part. Because they've been told by morons like this that that's actually better. It's better to not control your emotions and to just let them vent and to just let them control your life and to let them control your actions and to let them control extreme situations that you're in and to let them control your marriage and to let them control your relationships and to let them control where you work and let them control your politics and what kind of, that's preferable to these people. That's actually toxic. That's way more toxic. How much more toxic is it for a guy to be weak and to lack confidence, to be insecure and weak? You don't think that's going to have toxic outcomes? That's the dude who's going to murder somebody. So we got a bunch of women here, most likely. It's just my guess, but I'm going to say it's a women doing this survey. You got a bunch of women here telling men how to be, how to behave, what's toxic, what's acceptable. And how about this for a toxic behavior? Heterosexual. Oh, this is part of the man box rules that, being heterosexual is just one of these man box rules. It's like that they're just born that way. I thought that was the agreement. I thought that we thought that whether you're heterosexual or homosexual, we're born that way. So how is this? Oh, it's like got all these other kinds of things like this masochist, macho kind of thing. Is that what they're saying? Maybe, I don't know. Who knows anymore what these people mean when they say things, because their words have no definitions and they change what they mean constantly. So yeah, apparently very toxic. It's obviously not toxic. Homosexuality is obviously not toxic. Nothing bad ever happens in homosexuality, right? Never has any negative effects, never has any negative consequences, nothing bad ever. And social teasing behaviors. Social teasing behaviors are toxic masculinity. That's as it adheres to these man box rules. Social teasing. See, I know that this is women writing this article. No, I don't. There's no way that there's a guy who would put social teasing behaviors, even write a phrase like social teasing behaviors as toxic. Teasing. All it is a way to weed people out, to toughen people up, to find out what people are about, to find out what people can handle, to find out how well they can regulate their emotions, to find out how tough they are, how confident they are, how weak they are, all this kind of stuff. Because, hey, you want to have the strong people on your side. You want them to be your friends. You don't want the weak people to be your friends, because then if something happens, they're not going to be able to help you. Teasing is how you find that out in a safe way, without without having fist fights the whole time. So this is actually a safer way of vetting people that they're calling toxic. And what's the alternative? Well, probably however women sort these things out. That would be see, all of these things are just not female behaviors. Therefore, they're toxic. That's it. That's as basic as it is. Like, oh, well, they're not acting exactly like women do, therefore toxic. The research by Jesuit Social Services shows these attitudes are linked to harmful outcomes. They're linked to harmful outcomes. I'm sure they are, including mental health issues. As diagnosed by some woman who's telling the person that they have mental health issues. Violence. Oh, yeah, because if you appear tough, you're going to be violent, obviously. If you restrict your emotions and you're not just constantly out in the open with your emotions, you're going to be violent. So stupid. And exposure to violent pornography. How does any of that? What are you talking about? With parents identified as still playing a crucial role in influencing young men's development. It's just like such nonsense. The war on young men continues. You're not okay. You can't be the way that you are. You can't act the way that you act. You can't, all that kind of stuff. They're still at it. They're still trying to manipulate them. They're still trying. And this is what Gen Z grew up with, was this kind of shit right here. I didn't grow up with this stuff. There was no such thing as toxic masculinity when I was like a teenage boy. We did all this kind of stuff. It was all guys did all this stuff all the time. It was natural. And now they're trying to gerrymander and trying to manipulate and trying to control all of these things that they don't like because they're too powerful, and they don't like that they're too powerful, and they want to control them, and they want to be in control of these men. Because damn it, I want the power. And how do you control strong men? Well, can't. So if you make them weak and never let them get to the point of being strong, so you start young and you start indoctrinating them and undermining them and knocking their legs out from under and making them be insecure about themselves and question themselves constantly. And that's what women do. That's how women undermine their opponents. That's what they do. They guilt, they shame, they moralize, they try to make you feel insecure about yourself. They try to make you think that you don't know what you're talking about. They gaslight you, all that kind of stuff. And this is the tactic that they've used on these young men, especially Gen Z guys. And they're so sick and tired of it. And they're the reason, this kind of stuff, right? Trying to get rid of all this stuff in men are the reason why Gen Z men who have been told their whole lives that they have to be weak pussies, it's the reason why they like strong leaders. It's the reason why they like Trump. It's the reason why they're nationalists. It's the reason why they want just like a strong man to just come in here and beat these people over the head and get rid of them, right? So people like these researchers here are the ones who created that. They're the ones who create fascists. They're the ones who create nationalists. They're the ones who create strong men, because you have artificially and for 20 years of their life gaslit them, undermined them, hated them, told them they were bad, they were wrong, they were whatever. And now they want somebody to stick it to you because they finally realized that you were full of shit. And I don't blame them. I would want that too if I was them. Thankfully, I didn't have any of that stuff. I was able to actually be a boy and to learn. You took that all away from them. And they're angry about it. And they should be. And you deserve whatever you get. So here's a poll about illegal immigrants. So support for Trump's deportations. Take a look at this. I thought this was pretty interesting. So overall support 50%, oppose 47%. And basically it's party lines there. Net support by gender. Take a look at this. Men plus 19, women negative 10. So men by far support it. But that's toxic. Yeah. Because it's toxic to deport illegals, because that's not nice. It's toxic because you're like forcibly taking them, you know, and men are like, yeah, it's not toxic. You came here illegally, get out. And women are like, oh, but it's so meany. So anyway, by party, independents plus 12. So that probably shows maybe they're more conservative leaning. Independents are in general. Republicans plus 67. I'm surprised it's only plus 6. Yeah, I'm surprised it's only plus 67. Democrats negative 73. So Democrats obviously vehemently oppose it, and Republicans vehemently are for it. Obviously, everybody knows these things. This is kind of the where we're at. And this was a New York Times poll. So I think I would have to look at the poll to see how nuanced it is, you know, because I think that if this was illegal criminal immigrants, I think the support would be up around 80, because I don't think there's really any support for any of that. You know, just illegals in general. What people will go to is they'll think of, you know, Juan or something who cuts the grass or who helps on the construction site, and they're fine, normal person, so they're not like doing anything bad, so they're okay. I think that's where a lot of people are at on that. So kind of it's worded. I mean, I like how it's worded because it's getting at just a generic illegal immigrant. All right. This is a good comment, I think. Let's see. I guess I didn't read the whole thing, but also women don't like weak men. A man that gives in to women too much loses all of their respect, and their wives will leave them for another man because they give them everything. I think this is not even debatable. That's absolutely true. Women can't stand weak men. They even when you look at some of these, I'll leave that up. Even when you look at these surveys and stuff like that, like even liberal women will choose a more conservative guy because they think they're more masculine. You know, now when you meet them in real life, they won't ever admit it, but on the surveys they do. And so, what good is a weak man? Like that's the whole point. You know, like unless you're a lesbian, you're going to want a guy who's strong because women are weak. They can't defend themselves. You know, it's hard. They that we even have to have this conversation, and that this has been a conversation for so long is strange to me. Like it makes total sense that women would want a strong man. Now they don't want somebody who's going to beat the shit out of them. But I think that's kind of what these people associate with being strong. Like strong means me hurt, me break. You know, that's what they think of because they're retarded. But you know, they want somebody who can control their emotions. No woman wants a man who is overly emotional. They don't want that. They hate it. You would lose all of their respect instantaneously if you're overly emotional. They're already, as women, overly emotional. They don't need more of that shit in their lives. They want the man there to calm that down within them. Because women are higher in neurosis, they're higher in anxiety, and they look to their partner, to the man, to be calm, to be even keeled, to be level headed, to be all that stuff, so that they can come crazy, stressed out, and have someone they can rely on who's like, oh, okay, he said it's all going to be okay, therefore that makes me feel better, and I can now reduce my anxiety. If you got some emotional guy, and now you're both, what, we don't know what's going on, you know, then what good is that? You were already in that state. You just compounded it. You need somebody who's going to be able to say, okay, well, this is what we should do, and this is where we should go, and this is how we should fix the problem. Who in a time of crisis can just see clearly because their emotions aren't out of control. You know, that's a big part of strength. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about emotional strength, but also physical strength, because they're not as much anymore is physical strength like necessary. It was in the past a lot more than it is now, but still there's primitive impulses inside of us that, like, stronger guys they're better at protecting. They're better at, going out and getting resources, things like that. Now, they're not talking about some kind of like jacked dude at the gym who's got a bunch of fake muscles. You know, that's kind of, I think when a lot of women look at that, they see that guy as kind of being a weak guy and who's overcompensating for like insecurities, to where he has to puff himself up to feel like he's masculine, rather than just naturally being masculine and naturally it radiating out of him naturally, like being his own man, having his own ideas, having his own values, having convictions and all that kind of stuff. Like I think that the physical appearance of strength, because women know about, they are deeply familiar with image, okay? And they know that it's shallow, and they know that it's superficial, and they know that it's just constructed in order to manipulate. And so when they see these guys who are puffed up from the gym, they see it, I think, as like it's a superficial kind of thing that's trying to manipulate people into thinking that they're strong. and trying to manipulate people into thinking, and they can snuff that out instantaneously. But it's not so easy to do if you have values and you have morals and you have like this solidness, the solidness to you, the stability to you. And I think that's the desirable thing. And if they sense that you're unstable, if they sense that you can't make a decision, if they sense that you can't accomplish a task, if they sense that you're not thinking about how to take care of the family or to solve problems, or to, and if you're just emotionally and unstable, or if you don't know how to fix anything and you don't know how to, don't know how to do any of the traditional masculine things, they're not going to be happy. I mean, they're barely going to be happy if you do. Honestly, they're barely going to be happy if you are a great man. And so if you are a weak, pathetic, sort of like beta, cuck type guy, then she's not going to respect you at all. She's going to be really unhappy with you. But anyway, enough of that, I guess. That's my relationship advice for the day. Let's see, what else where was I? Oh God. Well, let's see this. Do I want to get into this? I mean, there's so much stupid shit that she says in here. I don't know if I have the energy for more stupid shit. Yeah, I'm a glutton for punishment. Might as well do it.
Don't come to Minnesota because you will fuck around and find out.
Like, terrifying. Oh my gosh. Oh, she said that we're going to find out. Yeah, I'm sure. Scared.
Yes, we don't always agree. And yes, there are racial tensions. But what you see is the community standing together of many nations, ages, sizes, backgrounds, colors. We are standing together, and we are not
Look at this lady. Look at her eyes. She's like, looks like she's high as a kite.
afraid of you, Trump. Come again, and you'll fuck around and find out.
Your eyes are barely
We will
open.
not go back to slavery. You will not take us back to Jim Crow.
Okay, anyway, sorry, this lady. Okay, so this is apparently ICE is going to take them back to slavery, take them back to Jim Crow. All right, I'm pretty sure that this is about, President Trump and ICE. You're not going to take us back to slavery. You're not going to take us back to Jim Crow. How the fuck does that even make any sense? What is she talking about? How is any of this affecting the Black community? How is immigration enforcement? If anything, it's like getting criminals out of your communities. How is this affecting the Black community negatively? That is putting them back into slavery and putting them into chains and back into Jim Crow. Like, what in the fuck is she even talking about? I mean, it's like these are just like the same talking points they use for everything, right? They're just like, I don't know, I'm mad, slavery. I don't have a point. I don't really know what's going on. I just know white supremacy, slavery, Jim Crow. It's like, well, do you have a point? What are you even talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. You've just been propagandized and then forced out there by the some Democrat to rile up the community so that hopefully, because maybe what's going on here, I don't know, is that there's not enough Black people out protesting ICE. And I know that that's been a topic of conversation. People are concerned about it. And so like they're trying to whip the Black community up into like, it's ICE. You got to get out here. You got to protest them because they're taking you back to slavery and Jim Crow. Just what? What the fuck are you talking about? But this is These are the topics they use to try to manipulate the black community into doing what they want. Just as plain as that. This is about what all this ICE stuff is about. It's about Democrat power, Democrat control. So they're manipulating the black community into trying to go out and protest ICE so that they can keep their Democrat power and control. And they have them use stupid ass fucking lines of reasoning like Trump putting us back into slavery.
Our ancestors fought too hard and bled too much and died too long for you to take us back as a nation.
So retarded. None of that has anything to do with anything.
Right. You see that they don't kill who they kill. They're killing white women. This is not a color line anymore. This is about the have and have not.
That's not about color, even though I just spent the whole first half of my speech talking about slavery and Jim Crow and making it about color, but it's not about color, right? So this is just like rambling, incoherent nonsense. She's got no through line. She's got no point. She's just talking about all this shit.
When as a nation is this okay? We are all immigrants. The only people who own this land are Native Americans. My people. I am Native American and I'm African American. And I'll tell you what, we were stuck.
Nobody ever owned the land. That's the facts. So you can't steal what wasn't owned. And, Native Americans, I mean, it's only people who don't really know the history of Native Americans could really say something this retarded because they were constantly taking the land from each other, constantly moving into other people's lands. They have wars. Now this is our territory. And constantly it was being shuffled around all the time. It's not like there was any one group who owned the land for thousands of years, And so nobody really owned the land. It was tribalism. It was whatever. So, and the whole immigrant thing, we're all immigrants. Nobody has a problem with immigrants. You fucking moron. I am so tired of people saying this. Nobody has a problem with normal, legal immigrants. Now, maybe you think we took in too many, so we need to take a little break so that we can sort of like get them acclimated to our culture, and then we'll bring more in. But almost nobody cares about, oh, you're an immigrant. No one gives a fuck. It's illegal immigrants that the Democrats deliberately brought into the country so that the Democrats could deliberately use them to seize more political power. That's what we're talking about. See how this lady's acting? That article that I was talking about earlier with the toxic masculinity. This is the kind if a guy was acting like this, then they wouldn't be toxically masculine because look, she doesn't have any emotional regulation. She's just making shit up and she's getting angry about the shit she's making up. I just made up this thing and now I'm pissed off about that thing that I made up. I mean, okay. Yeah.
All of the human beings brought to this land and built it. How dare you come and tell other human beings they don't belong on this land?
Because you own it now, so you can tell them they can't be here. That's how that works. When you make the rules and you get to say who can and can't come into your country. So it's pretty basic. How dare you? Well, because it's ours now, so we get to decide what happens to it because we have power. So it's pretty easy, so it's not that difficult to understand. And you get to decide that if you have the power to make it or not. If you're too weak to stop anyone from coming into your country, then you're not going to stop anyone from coming into your country. But if you're powerful enough to stop people from coming into your country, then you can. Or you can't. You get to decide. I don't understand why this is complicated to these people.
Today, we got justice for Nakima and Chantel. They are coming to your home. They're kidnapping your children.
They're coming into your homes and they're kidnapping your children. Where did they come up with this shit? It's like they just make up they make up a fake alternative reality, and then they're mad at that fake alternative reality that they made up.
And it's not just black people, it's not just Somalians, it's not Latinos, it's not even Asians, it's going to be all of you. New world order. You better get ready to fight for your democracy and your freedom.
Who gave this lady the mic? Oh my gosh. Were they trying to make the Democrat Party look stupid? She did a pretty good job of that. That was just a bunch of rambling nonsense with a bunch of buzzwords, none of which had a through line or made any sense whatsoever. But yeah, okay. Yeah. She hit all the stupid woke teacher points that she learned probably going to school to be a social worker or something. Washington State Democrats created a bill that allows illegals to become police officers. Imagine that. Police officers, illegals. Senate Bill 5068 will take away the U.S. citizen requirement to become a law enforcement officer in this state. What could possibly go wrong? Senator John Lovick's bill would allow non-citizens to become police officers. I doubt this will ever pass, but in the cuckoo Washington world, and basically Washington, the cuckoos are just in Seattle. The rest of the state's pretty normal, but I would be curious to see if
legislation we are tracking in Olympia is trying to take away the U.S. citizen requirement to become a law enforcement officer in this state. Senate Bill 5068 is sponsored by former Snohomish County Sheriff John Lovick. Senator Lovick's bill would allow non-citizens to become police officers and first responders as long as they are legally authorized to work in the U.S. The measure would also open up these jobs to DACA recipients. Senate Bill 5068 was one of many bills on the agenda for all senators today who gathered on the floor to discuss policies for the first time this session.
Well, I got to tell you, they had some restraint there. At least they restricted it to legal immigrants. Okay. Wow. But here, he got it wrong. Allow illegals to become police officers. Well, I guess unless you're saying DACA recipients, maybe. All right, guys. I think that's all I've got for you today. Anything else you got for me? Any other comments? Please remember, like and subscribe. Comment on the videos. Share them or post them or whatever, just to get more reach. I would appreciate that. I'm just going to look through some of these comments here. The Misfit Toys had their own island. Why can't the woke? They can have California. We'll just cut it off from the rest of the country. Yeah, it's kind of sad though. Like California is a beautiful country. I love the coastline and all so much about it is just so unique and so interesting and so cool. And it's unfortunate that it's become this sort of political woke hellhole and has become so corrupt, and is run by a bunch of idiots. And I feel like 40% of people in California are Republicans, and they're conservatives. There's a lot of conservatives in California, like a lot of Christians, a lot of evangelicals, a lot of very conservative people there. You don't really notice that when there's the larger conversation, because all you ever hear about in California is all the stupid, crazy lib shit they're doing. And you never really hear anything about the normal people who live there, who are almost half of the population. And, maybe they're moving out of the state now because it's becoming so unlivable. But it's unfortunate. It's sad to see that California is no longer a noble, perennial, like our shining state anymore. It's become so corrupted and so destroyed. But all right, guys, I'm going to take off. All right, I appreciate you joining me for this. I will be back next week. I'll be doing some more streams, so be sure to catch me there. I usually will start around 10 or 11 a.m. and hopefully you'll be able to join me. So, all right, have a good one. See ya.